I'd like to welcome to the show the co-directors of the film Fishbowl, Alexia and Steven. I was going to try to say your last name, but I didn't want to butcher it, so I was going to let you try and say it, and I was going to try to say it back to you guys.
Yeah.
Kinigopoulos.
Should it be the other way around? Kinigopoulos.
Kinigopoulos. Okay, all right. I was just like, okay, this is. I like the name. I just think it's different, and I'm just like, sometimes I try to pronounce it, and then I YouTube it, and I'm like, all right. So, but I couldn't find anything on YouTube to like repeatedly play in my ear for the last 15 minutes before I talk to you guys. But all right. Enough about the last name here. I wanted to talk to you before we dive into the film. I've got a question I like to ask. What is the first film you guys remember seeing in theater?
Oh, wow.
That's such a good.
Oh, my God.
Hey, Mom.
Me?
What was my first movie? Sorry, the Meatloaf. No, no.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Oh man.
I know mine.
Rated R movies. That's it. What was yours, Alexa?
Mine? Okay, the first movie I remember seeing in theaters was She's All That with Freddie Prinze Jr. That's classic.
I love it.
That is why I'm a filmmaker. Great movie.
It's a fun movie. It really is.
Oh, that's so funny.
You guys.
Can you remember yours?
I can't remember. It's so bad.
It's all right. It's all right.
Dang, this is killing me.
Richard, what was yours?
The first movie I remember seeing is Philadelphia, which with Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah, which is I was a very young age and didn't quite understand the concept of the film, but yeah, I mean, it's nonetheless, it was a great film. It's what also made me fall in love with movies as well, so. All right.
Wow, that's amazing.
All right, transitioning over. Okay, so you guys directed Fishbowl, which is about a small town filled with secrets. Three sisters are forced to cling to each other as they cope with the loss, and a father who's growing increasingly obsessed with the rapture he thinks is coming. What is the inspiration behind this idea?
Ooh. Well, the film started from a photo shoot I was doing, and Steve came along, and our buddy Levi, who was our director of photography. And so it started from the inspiration of a photo shoot with these three schoolgirls that had a secret, and it was a stormy day, and it just kind of inspired this interesting story that's like loosely based off of some of the things that we struggled with when we were growing up, kind of just knowing your identity, knowing, how to go about your religious beliefs, all that stuff. So, Steven got in there and wrote his heart out.
Yeah, and when we were shooting on the way back, we were shooting film, and I remember on the car ride back, I was like, well, what are we going to cut this to? Just music. So in the car, for the 1 minute drive from the location back to our house, we literally just wrote a monologue, and within that monologue still from that photo shoot day has made it into the final film. Because once we edited it, we were like, we should just add 89 more minutes to this. And then that's what we did.
I just said, and here we are.
Exactly. I mean, that's how film is, right? He starts off with a little small taste, and the rest is history. So I love it. The one thing
taste, persistence, and stubbornness.
Exactly. The one thing that I really enjoyed about the film was kind of intertwining with the struggle of Rick. The focus is a little bit on these girls, but at the same time, Rick is struggling, and it's the emotional connection you feel with Rick, I think, was very important, because it's like you like him, but then at the same time, some of his actions, you feel empathetic towards him. Was that the goal? Because again, he's not exactly the grandest of guys throughout the film, but at the same time, I felt a connection with him because of everything that he had to do.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah. I think it's important, not that Rick is the villain.
Right.
But I think when you have the opposite, it's important to kind of feel for him, or at least see his point of view. Like Santa, for example. Villain, but you see his point. You may not agree with it, but you see the point. And I think here, it was important to also picking up a dead dog, and you're kind of like, well, I guess that's kind of sweet but weird, like removing it. And then he returns it and asks for money, and right off the bat, you judge him just like the town that he's in.
Right.
But then you see in the next shot that his house is, foreclosing, so then he's justified doing whatever he can to provide for the family. So it's little things like that where I feel like if right off the bat you don't connect with him, you're not gonna. We felt like you're not gonna feel for him later on, you know?
Yeah, I think his character has to be empathetic. I think that you might not agree with his decisions, but in order to connect with that character, I mean, he's just a very humanly flawed character, like a lot of us are. Like, he has good intentions, but the way that he goes about things is maybe a little bit questionable. And I think that's just, like, really human. You know, like, we are flawed characters. So kind of just, like, someone in a time of struggle really might not make the best decisions, but they're just doing everything they can to kind of make it work, you know? So I think that was really important to have for people to necessarily not agree with him, but to understand maybe why he's doing this.
Yeah, because if you don't feel that emotional connection to him, like you said at the beginning of the film, you really don't appreciate the idea that, you know, it's really just a father hustling to keep a roof over his daughter's heads. And no matter how he's going about doing it, sometimes you have to go about things uncharacteristically to, provide for your family. I mean,
yeah.
That's a great way of putting
it. Yeah, true.
Okay, so speaking of Rick, the casting of Rick Kane, that to me was very pivotal. I thought he was fantastic throughout this entire film. Take us behind the casting there.
We love Rick. He's incredibly talented. He was a family friend, and Steven had worked with him before, and we were kind of just like blown away by his depth and just how he took on that character. And we had even really used him for the photo shoot. So kind of just we used Rick and Belle for the photo shoot. So it was kind of just set up naturally, and he was so down. So I think he really helped shape his own character, which was really cool because he kind of had been a part of the project from the beginning.
You guys co-directed the film together. Is this something that was planned from the beginning or something that kind of came about throughout?
It's interesting you say that because, Lex was primarily doing photography, I think, prior. We did like 2 music videos together, but, I was directing like commercials and things like that. I think Fishbowl solidified us into what we are now, which is business partners and co-directors, and we're doing music videos now together. I think before then it was just 1 or 2 times, but now we're a team. And yeah, I forgot what the question was, but should I keep talking?
Just the idea behind you guys. Yeah, and the other thing that I want to point out as well is moving on to the cinematography. The color palette. I'm a strong person. I love a beautiful color palette of a film, and this film had this very. It was a very like a low key bright film, even with its dark undertone, which I thought was an interesting mix. Obviously, we're in the mix of him thinking about there's a rapture coming, but at the same time, we have these very soft, colorful colors that kind of make it warm and welcoming. Was there a strategic behind that?
Yeah, my sister is a wizard with color.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that is extremely strategic. Usually on every project we do, even music videos, we're picking out almost every outfit because I just think it's such a fun way to do more visual storytelling. That's not just like through dialogue. So the point was to kind of give it a utopian daydream feel because it's like a very calming presence, like the color, the pastels and the vibe that is coming from the costume design. But then you're in this uncomfortable, suspenseful situation. So then when you do see colors that are red or green or very aggressive, it's for a reason. So visual storytelling is really important to Steven and I, and it's kind of just really a fun way to make people feel a certain mood without them really knowing. It's kind of just like subconscious. So that's like definitely one of my favorite parts of filmmaking.
One other thing that kind of that was to note for me was there wasn't really a score to the film. We had some soundtrack to the film a little bit here and there, but was this also, that's another question I have for you. Was this strategic in a way? Because sometimes, a score can define a film, but for me, it's not always cut and dry about whether a score can elevate a film or not. So your utilization of not utilizing it, was that a strategic? And what's the idea behind that as well?
Yes. So we do have music on later. However, George Pelecanos has been kind of a mentor to Alexa and I, and in his shows, and as he's mentored us, the one thing, he said, not one thing, he said a lot of things that, we will enforce and have learned from. But one thing he says is that there's not music following you everywhere you go. And that music should be practical in the sense of if you're in a car, you can have it on the radio. If it's TV, you can have it there because real life. And I feel like this is a silent film. So I feel like it helps add to that. So when you do hear music, it sets up a whole different vibe. And it's meaningful and more impactful.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, when there is music, it's very intentional.
Absolutely. Exactly. I love something like that because, again, I'm just trying to pick you guys' brain when it comes to stuff like that. For me, I got two questions. One's going to be a fun one, and I'll ask that one in a minute. But the first one is, what is the message that you want to come across with this film whenever somebody leaves seeing it?
Interesting. I think what we want someone to think about, I don't know if there's a specific message. It's more about thinking, reflecting on maybe your own identity and just the decisions that we make for ourselves. I mean, really, because the girls end up making a strong decision for themselves. So I think it's really about personal identity and what we do to take care of ourselves. So for me, that's kind of what I take away from it is kind of how you get yourself out of a situation and kind of the things that we sacrifice, So I don't know, Steve, what do you think? What is it for you?
I couldn't have said it better, so I'm not going to talk at all. I also think that, and also just the cliche of you never know what other people are going through, and their reasonings for things, and don't be quick to judge kind of on a surface level of it. But, yeah, more of what Alexa said. Mine was more of a stretch.
No, I like what you said. I don't think that's a stretch. I think that's really not.
Exactly. I mean, it's
Thank
kind
you,
of
sister.
All right, so the fun one. This is my favorite question to ask everybody. It gets a variety of different answers, and we'll close on this one. What is, and you guys can go separate, what is your favorite Taylor Swift song?
Oh,
I have so many.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
I might not answer this one.
It's okay.
Like I think it has to be Exile or Number One. Folklore just dropped. People get it.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
This is sponsored. I'm sponsored by Taylor Swift. Yeah. I'd say Exile is pretty great.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Thank you for the film and kind of, let me pick your brain a little bit today, guys. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.